Once again, Egypt's Christian community is under attack. The health ministry says the victims had been on their way to the St. Samuel Monastery when up to 10 gunmen in 3 vehicles surrounded them and opened fire. Outside of the hospital, signs of chaos as random voices shout out that blood is needed. Local media spoke to survivors who said they saw the attackers wearing military uniforms. Minya is a largely Orthodox Christian area with deep roots going back centuries.
As a human rights person, I believe that somebody from the international arena has to step in and to scream and yelling that we are in the 21st century and this barbaric issue has to stop.
The attack comes after ISIL claimed responsibility for bombing churches in Tanta and Alexandria over Easter, which killed 46 people, and then another attack in February in the Sinai. In December, the armed group announced it would attack Christians across Egypt. The Coptic Orthodox Church is the largest Christian denomination in Egypt, accounting for around 10% of the population. It's a community that suffered successive rounds of violence.
In Minya, we have seen a number of sectarian attacks in the past. Many churches that were attacked following the Rabba massacre in August of 2013. So it might also be a place where it's relatively easy to recruit people who would be willing to conduct these sorts of attacks.
The Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights has recorded 77 sectarian attacks on Christians in Minya province alone between 2011 and last year, as well as many more incidents of vandalism at churches and schools in the province.
And to some breaking news now out of Afghanistan. The Taliban have attacked a military base, killing at least 18 soldiers. The attack occurred in the Shah Wali Kot district in the southern Kandahar province. 16 soldiers have also been wounded during the fighting. It's the second such attack in 2 days and comes as Taliban insurgents intensify a spring offensive.
Former Greek Prime Minister Lucas Papademos was wounded on Thursday after a letter bomb detonated inside his car. This is the first terror attack in Greece to target a former leader in decades. Hospital officials say the 69-year-old sustained superficial injuries to the chest, abdomen, and legs, but his condition does not inspire concern. 2 of Papademos' guards who were in the car also sustained light injuries. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the blast. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras fiercely condemned the attack. Papademos served as Prime Minister from November 2011 until May 2012 and oversaw a controversial debt swap during his administration.
The might of the military is brought in. Nearly 4,000 soldiers are now available for deployment to guard the UK's most at-risk locations. The number of armed police has also been boosted. But despite the critical threat alert, officials are calling for calm.
No reason at all to be panicked, no reason at all to be alarmed. We're doing all that we can to keep Londoners and visitors safe.
On Wednesday, about 1,000 soldiers were already out on public patrol. The soldiers can be sent to stand on guard at the UK's most well-known areas, like Downing Street, so the police can then be sent to keep watch over lower profile but still potentially vulnerable targets. But here in the UK capital, Londoners say life goes on as normal.
The shops are still open, people are still going out on the streets, and everyone seems pretty just carrying on with their daily lives.
London, to be honest, is quite used to being under attack. As an older person, I can remember the earlier attacks during the 80s and 90s from terrorist groups. So we continue. A critical threat level means another terror attack could be imminent, though some security experts question whether the UK has made the right choice by bringing in troops. But at least for now, people in the UK will have to get used to seeing not just more police, but also soldiers as they carry on with their day-to-day lives.
Well, with the investigation still ongoing, British police are now hunting a possible terror network linked to the suicide bomber. 8 people have been arrested so far. Attacker Salman Abedi's family are also being investigated. His younger brother and father have been arrested in Libya, with his father also believed to have been part of a terror group in the Libyan civil war of 2011. Abedi's older brother is in custody in the UK. RT's Murad Ghaziev has the details.
Like father, like sons. In the case of the Manchester bomber, it really does appear to run in the family, although it's still early. Ramadan Abadai, the father of the suicide bomber, allegedly fought against Gaddafi during the Libyan civil war, as did a whole lot of his fellow Mancunians.
We were in the same group over there. We called ourselves the Manchester Fighters. We even had our own logo. 3/4 of the fighters at the beginning of the revolution were from Manchester.
The Manchester Fighters, who, by the way, came and went as they pleased. The British government apparently turned a blind eye to their comings and goings. After all, they were doing God's, well, Downing Street's work, getting rid of Gaddafi, in the process radicalizing, learning to kill and make bombs. But that's just war, right?
After 3 days of fighting, Syrian Democratic Forces have seized the town of Al-Hamra in northeastern Raqqa province. It had been under the control of ISIL. The SDF is backed by the United States. President Donald Trump wants to accelerate the pace of defeating ISIL in Syria and Iraq.
SDF forces have captured the dens of the terrorists in Al-Hamra. We also captured a large number of terrorists.
President Trump has ordered a shift in tactics against ISIL to encircle the armed group's strongholds before proceeding to destroy them. The SDF is closing in on Raqqa from all sides. In the countryside west of Raqqa, the SDF is on the verge of capturing the ISIL-controlled Bath Dam. It's one of the biggest dams in the province and is important. Whichever side controls the water supply has control over nearby cities and the countryside. ISIL is also being pushed back in Homs province in central Syria, this time by Syrian government forces backed by the Russian military. 3 years ago, ISIL seized large parts of northern and western Iraq and proclaimed the creation of an Islamic State stretching across the border with Syria. But since then, the US-led coalition says ISIL has lost more than 40% of its territory in Iraq and more than 20% in Syria. SDF forces circling Raqqa say momentum is with them and that they will drive ISIL out of the self-declared capital.
The Philippine Army says it has so far killed more than 30 militants linked to so-called Islamic State as fighting continues for a third day in the southern island of Mindanao. The island's been under martial law since Tuesday, and thousands of the residents in a besieged city have been evacuated. Noah Ram reports.
The fighting started Tuesday when the Philippine Army tried to raid the house of Isnilon Hapilon, leader of the extremist group Abu Sayyaf. However, the troops' failed attempt to capture Hapilon, who is on the FBI's most wanted list, set off a violent backlash as a militant group known as the Mauti started firing back. The chaos prompted President Rodrigo Duterte to declare martial law in the country's second-largest island, and he is now considering expanding it nationwide. Helicopters and special forces were mobilized to flush out extremist rebels in the besieged city of Marawi, where both the Mauti and followers of Hapilon burned down several buildings and took churchgoers hostage to be used as human shields. Both groups have pledged allegiance to the so-called Islamic State, which claimed responsibility late on Wednesday for Mauti's activities via its Amaq news agency. The White House condemned the Mauti group as cowardly terrorists and said the United States was a proud ally of the Philippines and backed its fight against extremism. Military leaders say about 15 security forces and just over 30 militants have died so far in the urban fighting, which has prompted most of the 200,000 Marawi residents to flee the city.
The Philippines and Russia have approved 10 agreements regarding arrangements for defense cooperation, tourism, and agriculture. The signing of the 10 agreements took place on May 24 in Moscow, led by Philippine Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano. The defense cooperation agreement will lay the groundwork for procurement of military hardware from Russia. Regarding the defense agreement, Cayetano said, quote, "The response of the Russian Federation through President Putin was very, very generous. In terms of agriculture, Agriculture Secretary Emmanuel Piñol signed a memorandum of understanding for cooperation in agriculture and fisheries, livestock breeding, and produce protocols. Regarding trade, Philippine Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez signed an agreement to foster beneficial trade between the countries. For tourism, Philippine Tourism Secretary Juan Dateo agreed with a tourism joint action program, providing a commitment that both countries will promote each other's tourism industries.
Vietnam has received a U.S. warship challenging Chinese claims in the South China Sea, a meeting at the White House, and 6 new coastal patrol boats. All of its new contributions are signs of a U.S. commitment, which Vietnam previously feared was waning under President Donald Trump. The Southeast Asian countries emerged as the most powerful opponent of China's claim to one of the world's most important seaways. Prime Minister Win Chang-Fook will be the first Southeast Asian leader to visit the White House next Wednesday under the new Trump administration as well.
Like the Korean Peninsula, there is another Cold War flashpoint in Northeast Asia. The threat of conflict between China and Taiwan has not gone away either. This week, Taiwan's armed forces have been simulating what conflict could look like 8 years from now, when China's military will be much stronger. There is an added edge to this annual rehearsal for war. Cross-straits relations are now so bad that the leaders of both sides are not talking to each other. A former Taiwanese defense minister has another concern. He fears China's growing arsenal of advanced weaponry is creating a dangerous military imbalance.
It's very serious because we still lack of the advanced technology, sensor system, and also training as well. And the PLA, they possess very improved technology and also very professional soldiers and officers.
That Taiwan's military needs better weaponry is not in doubt, say experts. Its main defense supplier is the United States, and the Trump administration is now reportedly crafting a new arms package.
These military exercises come at a sensitive time, with no confirmation as yet that the arms deal will go through. There's been a complication. Strong opposition from China's leaders, and President Trump needs their support to resolve the crisis on the Korean Peninsula.
Iran says it has built a third underground missile factory. The semi-official Fars news agency reports a top Revolutionary Guard commander made the announcement Thursday, May 25th, during a public meeting in Desful. Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh reportedly said Iran will increase its missile power. The report did not say where the factory is or whether it has already produced any missiles. Tensions between the United States and Iran are already running high. On Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump called on the world to isolate Iran. Speaking to a gathering of Arab leaders, Trump said, quote, "For decades, Iran has fueled the fires of sectarian conflict and terror." The next day, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said his country does not need permission from the United States in order to conduct missile tests. The Trump administration reacted to a January missile test by slapping new sanctions on Iranian businesses and individuals.
Estonia is expelling 2 Russian diplomats from Moscow's consulate in the northeast of the Baltic state. Maria Finoshina has more details on this.
What we know for sure so far is that the 2 senior Russian diplomats have been ordered to leave Estonia earlier on Friday, and that was confirmed to RT by the Russian embassy in this Baltic country as well as by Estonia's foreign ministry. Both added that they cannot give any further information. So the reasons so far are still unclear. The Russian foreign ministry told RT that they consider this decision, quotation, yet another unfriendly and absolutely groundless act. And they also promised that this will not go unanswered. I have to say that the relations between Russia and Estonia, one of the former Soviet republics, have in fact never been easy, but it is really at this point hard to say without speculating what exactly was behind this particular decision. So we have to wait and see.
American grumbles that Europeans don't pay enough for their own defence, and nothing new. But there were pained looks across the faces of NATO leaders as US President Donald Trump bluntly told them that Uncle Sam is not willing to hand the continent a blank check.
23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense. This is not fair to the people and taxpayers of the United States. If all NATO members had spent just 2% of their GDP on defense last year, we would have had another $119 billion for our collective defense and for the financing of additional NATO reserves.
Hiking defence spending is still a sore subject, but leaders are united in fighting ISIL. NATO will now also formally join the alliance against ISIL, said Angela Merkel. After all member states have done so, as well as the EU, I think this is a strong signal, but it's also clear this does not entail any further contribution by Germany beyond what we're doing at the moment. Diplomats quoted by the AFP news agency said France, Germany and Italy had opposed such a move, fearing they'd eventually have to put boots on the ground and risk souring ties with Arab nations.
President Donald Trump and his counterparts from 6 of the world's most powerful countries have gathered for the 2-day summit, the G7, in Italy, to discuss the globe's most pressing problems. The meeting topics will include general economic issues, the Syrian civil war, Russian aggression, and the fight against ISIS. It will allow new leaders like Trump and newly elected French President Emmanuel Macron, along with veterans such as German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, opportunities to shape global events.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration said there's a good chance the East Coast will have more reason than usual to be worried about hurricanes in 2017. NOAA's forecasters said there's a 45% chance there will be more hurricanes than normal during this year's hurricane season, compared to a 20% chance that it'll be more calm than average. They also forecast somewhere between 5 and 9 hurricanes. 2 to 4 of them would likely be major storms or hurricanes with winds over 111 miles per hour. Scientists said they based the predictions on a weakened El Niño and warmer ocean temperatures, which can help tropical storms build up power. And there's already evidence of some of the effects of the shifting weather patterns. We saw the first tropical storm of the year form in April. Last year also saw an uptick in storms, but not to the same degree. There were 5 storms that made landfall, 2 of which were hurricanes. Hurricane season runs from June 1st to November 30th.
In Sri Lanka, at least 91 people have died and 110 are still missing after heavy monsoon rains triggered deadly floods and landslides in the south and western parts of the country. The country's disaster management center said that nearly 8,000 people have been displaced by flooding in the affected areas. Heavy rains that began on Thursday are expected to continue, and the government has advised people living near swollen rivers and hilly slopes to evacuate their homes.
We all know DNA stores the code that makes us exist. Those G's, T's, C's, and A's might not seem like much, but they're effectively the same as computer code. Plus, unlike computers, DNA works at the molecular scale, meaning that you can pack an inconceivable amount of information into a really, really tiny space. With the rise of HD, constant streaming, and mega media consumption, storing staggering amounts of data in molecular form might just be a necessity. Scientists have already been working on DNA-based computer storage for a few years now. So far, we've managed to translate hundreds of megabytes holding everything from a computer virus to an Amazon gift card into DNA. In the next few years, Microsoft believes it can bring a DNA-based storage solution online in a commercial data center by 2020.
Well, Israeli archaeologists have announced a major discovery in the ancient city of David. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, it brings both the Bible and ancient history to life.
About 20 feet below the surface, Israeli archaeologists have uncovered a 2,000-year-old road next to the city of David.
The road leads from the Pool Siloam below and goes up to the Temple Mount. 2,000 years ago, this likely would have been the route that Jesus took on his way up to the temple.
This is probably where Jesus acted and marched during his time.
Moran Hajbi is an archaeologist with the Israel Antiquities Authority.
We know today that this street was paved during the time of Pontius Pilate, which famous for crucifying Jesus. And now it's opening a new era in the research of Jerusalem.
The excavation points directly to the time the Romans quelled a Jewish rebellion and destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD. One example is this remarkably preserved 2,000-year-old burned palm frond or branch.
When we're speaking about the destruction, this is a destruction. The palm tree was burned in the fire that the Roman ignited here. And again, when we're speaking about the last moment of Jerusalem, this tree probably saw the last moment of Jerusalem. And again, it's very symbolic because the palm tree is the symbol of Judea in that time.
They also discovered weapons of war from Jerusalem's fight for life.
This is the evidence of the battle. These ballista balls that was shot by catapults into the city, maybe within the city itself. Arrowheads that was fired both by the Romans and the Jewish rebels. And obviously we're speaking about battles and wars, and we have the weapons here that, again, telling us these stories.
Some escaped through this drainage channel. For Hajbi, the project tells a compelling story.
And the fighting was happening here in the street and in the drainage channel, which is right underneath us. People were just running away through these drainage channels. Some of them ran to Masada. Sometimes I find myself imagine people running along the street, maybe running from the Romans, maybe running to fight against the Romans, and again, and this fire in this background.
Within a few years, as the dig moves toward the Temple Mount, people can look forward to retracing the steps of Jesus from 2,000 years ago.